much are closing costs when you buy a piece of investment real estate? Well, the answer to that is going to be that it depends a lot on different factors, largely the location of where you are purchasing that property. The closing costs can vary a fairly significant amount from one area or state to another one. So it's important to keep in mind what's applicable in your state may be different in another one. But basically, many states have a lot of the same variables. The first one that we're going to talk about is transfer tax. Transfer tax is charged by a lot of states when real estate is sold, and that is basically a percentage or rate that's relative to the purchase price of the property. So in Pennsylvania, there's a total of 2% charged. That's one that goes to the state and another one that goes to the local region. Now, it's pretty consistent across many of the local areas that your transfer tax is 1%, but there are certain regions that charges a higher transfer tax that you should be aware of. For example, in Reading City, they have a local transfer tax of 2.5%. So if you are selling a property within that region, be sure that you're aware of what that transfer tax is going to differ from most of the other regions throughout the area. In Maryland, the transfer tax is much more varied. There's a statewide 0.5% on the purchase price of the property, but then they allow different counties to apply their own rate, and there's a lot of variance between the different counties in Maryland. So what's applicable in Harford County may be very different from what's applicable in Baltimore County. Just make sure that you're aware of what the local application is in reference to transfer tax. The second major closing cost is going to be your title insurance. Title insurance is a cost to make sure that the legal history of ownership of the property you're purchasing is protected. So title insurance is required by lenders. It can be optional if you're purchasing a property for cash, but it is still a wise thing to do to make sure that a significant investment is going to be protected from a legal standpoint. Title insurance, there is some variance again by state, but there's a little more consistency. In Pennsylvania, the title insurance is mandated by the state and is generally between 0.5% to 1% of the total purchase price of the property, with that percentage decreasing as you go up higher in price point. And in Maryland, it's a similar cost, but there's a little more variance as you go upward in price point as well. But again, similar to 0.5% to 1% of the total price of the property. Another major closing cost is the loan fee. So if you're going to get a loan to purchase the property, there's going to be a fair amount of cost involved with that. Now, generally, there's a origination fee or similar type of fee that goes to the company that is helping you get the loan. And that can range between 0.5% to 1% of the purchase price. Again, usually the higher purchase price, the lower that percentage will go as you go up in price. And then there's also additional lender fees like appraisal cost, underwriting fees, and other types of fees that different lenders will put onto it. But the biggest one of those is generally the origination fee that the lender's going to charge. The fourth type of closing cost that you'll incur as a buyer or seller is a commission that's paid to a real estate agent or broker to sell the property or assist you in buying. Now, it is fairly common that if you are a buyer and you have an agent representing you, that agent may be compensated by the seller, even though they're representing you as a buyer. But that's not always the case, and you as a buyer may be responsible for paying your own agent or negotiate some sort of understanding with them. Typically, when you're a seller and you're hiring a broker to sell your property, you're going to pay your own broker. And as mentioned, you may also pay a fee to another agent who brings a buyer to the property as well. But again, that can be negotiated and is completely open to the parties involved. There's a lot of tradition around having about a 6% cost for the seller to pay, which is split between two agents. But as you go up in price, the percentage amount certainly decreases. And again, everything is negotiable. If you have something in mind, you can always discuss that with your agent who's qualified to handle that. Those are 4 major closing costs associated with purchasing a property. And in addition to that, you'll usually have some prorations, which means things like property taxes, ongoing property taxes, and utilities will be divided equally between a buyer and a seller, as well as any rents for income properties divided between the buyer and seller based on their closing date. Those can be costs to the sheet as well, but are generally things that you would be paying anyway. I hope this video brought you some value. If so, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you're looking for investment properties within Pennsylvania or Maryland, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to help.